Chapter 18 Insidiis. You are born in the stable, you die in the stable. Now hang on, back up 1 minute. This was Insidiis and not Chrysalis? I guess this explains why Chrysalis was freaking out so badly about the Insidiis I heard about in that memory. Insidiis being her kid and all, but still. I'd expected to see the queen emerge all dramatically out of the shadowy corner, and not the freaking princess. But why is the princess the overmare? Why not the queen? Unless... Okay, hold up a moment. I interrupted the changeling queen before she could ask any of her questions. Before anything, no offense, but I've been hearing a lot about Queen Chrysalis lately, and I was kind of expecting her to be the overmare? The princess flinched, and I knew I had hit a nerve. Oh boy.
It is I who shall be asking the questions, Pony.
Insidiis rebuffed severely.
And what I have to ask is very important for the future of my changelings.
Look, I've been through a lot to get here. I shot back at the changeling. So throw me a bone here. Question for a question? The princess considered me for a moment.
You mean we take it in turns?
I nodded, hoping she would go for it. I was in no mood to wait for answers any longer. And she did.
Very well,
Insidiis decided, sitting herself down at the opposite end of the table to me.
But I shall start. Is that agreeable?
Fine, shoot. Insidiis nodded and wasted no time.
First and foremost, how did you find this place? And how did you unlock the door to get inside?
Right. Well... Glancing at the pipbuck on my hoof, I realized that her question actually fed directly back into my own. It also made me realize how immensely awkward things were about to get. I guess I could just say it's a random pipbuck that just happened to have the coordinates of the stable or some other lie, but then again... The pipbuck, I answered, showing her the device. It had the location of this place on the map and nothing else. We knew the password from some old MAS files at the Manhattan hub. Insidiis narrowed her eyes.
The pipbuck? And why would that device even have the location of the hive saved on it?
Yeah, about that. Here goes. When I first got it, there was a different name to my own on the main screen. That name was Chrysalis. The princess's eyes shot open wide.
What?
I didn't even have time to protest as my hoof was yanked forward in her magic, and I was haphazardly deposited on top of the table as she went to examine the pipbuck. A little warning would have been nice, or, she could have asked.
My mother's,
she whispered to herself before she dropped my hoof and glared daggers at me.
Where did you get this pipbuck?
Hey, I didn't take it from a skeleton or anything. I quickly assured the princess as I retreated back to my nice and safe end of the table. I got it from a trader in New Appaloosa, and she came across it in a similar way, I think. I don't know where it was first found. The changeling didn't seem to like my answer, but she did her best to calm herself down. She closed her eyes as she processed the information, letting out a long sigh. Then she opened her eyes, and her glare was slightly less shooty.
I see,
she muttered.
Then I suppose this leads us back to your initial question.
Yeah, I'd say so, I confirmed. So where is your queen? Insidiis gritted her teeth, and I suddenly wondered whether I was pushing this super powerful creature a little too far. Nevertheless, she answered the question.
I don't know.
Insidiis responded.
When Stable Tech issued the call for all stables to seal, my mother was away from the hive on business. I do not know if she ever returned to the hive, as the door has not been opened in 200 years.
You sealed the stable with your mother outside? I guess that explains how the pipbuck could have ended up in Ditsy's hooves 2 centuries later. You didn't, wait? Wrong question, Scrap Heap! Insidiis slammed her hooves into the table, and I couldn't help but wilt under her renewed glare that was full of pure anger and sadness? Regret? I honestly couldn't tell what she was feeling. Probably because I was suddenly terrified for my life.
Of course I waited, you fool!
Insidiis bellowed.
Even as radiation flooded into the upper levels of the hive, and we could hear the distant crashes of balefire explosions. But the spread of the radiation would not stop, and it was at lethal levels. There came a point where had I waited to close the door any longer, the whole stable would have been lost.
Okay, I'm sorry. I quickly apologized, hoping that would appease the princess at least a little. I get it. I do. You had to save who you could. My response seemed to work as she calmed down again.
My apologies,
Insidiis said with a sigh.
I must admit my mother's fate is a sore spot for me. And I suppose in the end I inherited at least a fraction of her temper.
Well, I know she at least cared for you, I noted honestly.
And how could you make such a claim?
I found a memory orb, I explained. At some MAS facility we couldn't get far in before being shot at. It showed the day your mother decided to make an alliance with Equestria, and well, she did it for you.
She did?
Insidiis questioned, and this was clearly new information to her.
Could I see this orb after we conclude?
Sure. I didn't see any harm in it, and if it built some goodwill, why the fuck not? I, also think it's your turn to ask something.
Of course, we should get back on topic.
Insidiis agreed, fully composing herself.
So you've clearly gone through a lot of effort to reach this place. Why?
Caps, I answered. Insidiis looked confused.
Caps? What do you mean?
Right. Well, most ponies don't use bits anymore up top. We use bottle caps for currency now. Not exactly many bits around to use anyway. Insidiis furrowed her brow and thought.
Things are still in a bad way topside, aren't they?
I think it's my turn, I interrupted. She seemed annoyed by that, but nevertheless sat ready and waiting. Why haven't you left the stable until now? Especially if you're low on love.
We couldn't leave,
Insidiis answered.
We attempted to open 20 or so years after the bombs dropped, but found the mechanism to open the door was stuck. Nothing we did could get it to budge, so we were trapped down here. Fortunately, it seems you opening it from the outside has reset the system and fixed whatever malfunction caused the issues.
So now you can leave. Insidiis gave a small but genuine smile.
Yes. After 2 centuries, the changeling race can finally see the sun again.
About that. Insidiis' smile was replaced with a frown. I guess it's time I returned to her question and told her just how fucked the world had become while they'd been down here. I told her everything I knew, starting with how the Pegasi had closed up the skies and left all the surface dwellers to rot. I told them about how the Equestrian wasteland was just a band of various survivor settlements trying to make the best of it, and how we had to contend with everything from raiders to weird mutant alicorns from Splendid Valley. The latter really seemed to disturb her. Or maybe it was the entire explanation that did that. I couldn't really tell.
That is deeply concerning,
Insidiis mused to herself.
I knew that the ponies may be in difficult times, but I had hoped Princess Luna had at least survived to keep some semblance of order.
If she had, do you think you would still be down here?
I suppose you have a point,
Insidiis admitted.
And it's like this everywhere? All over the world?
Well, I think so. Not that I had ever left Equestria. We hear stories about other wastelands. As far as any pony knows, the radiation killed off any and all civilizations that survived the bombs dropping.
Even those who had nothing to do with the war?
Insidiis shuddered.
To think the world is now a lawless land where life is a battle for survival, it almost seems impossible. The world I knew had fallen on troubled times, to be sure, but for most ponies, life was at least generally safe.
Safe isn't a concept in the wasteland, I replied grimly. She probably pictured a normal pony life as going to school, getting a job, and then aging until you could only shit in a bag. Now, well, you would be lucky to live to half of such an age with all the gunfire and gnashing teeth. I'm a scavenger by trade. I recover scrap from pre-war ruins in hope of making enough caps to survive until the next day.
Which is why you came here,
Insidiis surmised.
To see what our stable had to offer you in terms of salvage, no doubt.
Kinda, yeah. For me, at least. Though it hadn't exactly turned out that way. I only learned that your people even existed on the way here. Which brings me to my most pressing question. Insidiis raised an eyebrow.
Oh? And what is that, then?
My friends, I said, trying to put as much caution in my tone as possible. Where are they? The unicorn and the zebra, where?
The two you arrived with. I thought you might ask about them.
Insidiis began, and I hoped they hadn't harmed them.
They are fine. Though your zebra companion was suffering terribly from some kind of poison. While you and that other stallion were thrown in the cells, the zebra was taken to the infirmary to be treated. We are not monsters, Scrap Heap.
Stripe had been taken to the infirmary? Did that mean she was going to be okay?
But now, for my most pressing question.
Insidiis interrupted my train of thought.
What are your intentions now, Pony?
What was I going to do? After everything that had happened and with these changelings, I obviously wouldn't be getting any salvage from Stable 84. I don't know.
Do you have hostile intentions against us?
What? No, not the last time I checked. At that, Insidiis smiled.
I see. In that case, I have a proposition for you.
What? Is she about to offer me a job? What?
Come. Your friends should both already be in the infirmary,
Insidiis said as she got up and approached the door out of the room.
We can discuss the details as we walk.
Well, what else was I to do but follow? The hallways of the stable were filled with changelings. Almost all of them were wearing blue stable jumpsuits and even had pipbucks on their hooves, though they seemed to be of a slightly different model to mine. When I asked about them, Insidiis had described them to be Alpha Series Pipbuck 3000s. They had all the same functions as the Pipbuck 3000 Mark IV, but was both sturdier, borderline indestructible according to her, and could not be removed from the user's hoof without special tools. I think I prefer being able to take mine off whenever I want to. They also seemed to give me a wide berth, apparently not knowing what to make of the armored pony. though the presence of their princess/overmare and the 2 security guards flanking us did seem to assure them at least a little. It was also really bright down here. Seriously, could they not dim those lights even slightly? The hallways themselves were all made in the same uniform metal that the entirety of the stable was made from. We often passed by closed doors with the stable number written proudly on them, and various signs pointed in the directions of important areas such as the Overmare's office and the cafeteria. And the entire time, the princess had only ever spoken to describe to me certain areas of the stable and some interesting tidbits about what had occurred there over the previous 2 centuries. Though I had inquired about the changeling infiltrator I had seen in the memory orb, who she had then described as an unsettling individual who had apparently lost a brother during the invasion of Canterlot long before the war, after which he had never been the same. She hadn't elaborated much on that, claiming that the drone had always made her uncomfortable to be around during her younger years. Though Insidiis did add that he only had gotten worse because of the war itself. While that explained a little about what I had seen, the rest of her chatter was largely meaningless small talk. And though I nodded along with her, I was more interested in whatever job she wished of me and was waiting for her to get to that bit. And then we emerged into the stable's atrium. The room was huge, doors lining the outside of the ground level with balconies higher up making up the 2nd level. A circular window up top had a view of the entire chamber, and I could only assume that was the Overmare's office. But more of note, the room seemed to have a large gathering of children inside? Wait, were they having a birthday party? They were! I don't know, I guess I wasn't expecting the changelings to have something so normal as a child's birthday party. I don't know why, but well, it was nice to see, seeing as I'd certainly never had one. They even had a birthday cake set up on a table with a Mr. Handy seemingly getting ready to cut it into slices. Though I hope that saw blade doesn't only end up making a mess of it. But all of the children and their parents turned to stare at me with wide eyes the moment we walked in. We stopped a moment, and the princess said a few quick words to them, even wishing one filly a happy birthday before then leading me off down another corridor with a sign for the infirmary. At least I knew we were on the right track, but I was done waiting in silence. So what is this about? I asked the princess, who glanced toward me without slowing her pace. This thing you want me to do, what is it?
I suppose an explanation is due.
You think?
Well?
Insidiis sighed, and her mood dropped.
To put it bluntly, we need your help.
My help? What could these changelings possibly need me for? I don't think...
Hear me out,
the princess asked, and I shut up. I guess I should just let her explain.
It is fortunate you unsealed the door when you did. Because my stable has something of a crisis developing, and I was increasingly at a loss for what to do.
What do you mean?
It's our water talisman,
Insidiis stated, her tone grave.
Our stable was never meant to remain closed for as long as it has, and we were not given replacement talismans. Now ours is failing, and we've barely been making do by jury-rigging and repairing what we can. But pretty soon, our water will start to become irradiated, and then we will begin to die.
Well, shit, that sucks.
Bottom line is, we need a new one,
Insidiis continued.
We have the location of another nearby stable, Stable 77, which may have spares we could use. But we need someone to make the trip to retrieve the device for us.
Why can't you just go and claim it yourselves?
Because we need time to acclimatize to the world above,
Insidiis responded, and I guess she had a point.
We have equipment we can use to begin cleaning the hive of radiation, now that it's at a more manageable level, as always was the intent.
You'd need to clear out the ghouls, too, I added. Some of your changelings 200 years ago made it back to the hive after you closed, but they've mutated into, zombies.
I see,
she muttered, frowning.
Our security teams can deal with that as we clear the hive. Though, I'm assuming you've already begun that process.
I had to help Stripe.
Indeed. But beyond reclaiming our home, we shall need to focus on scouting the area around us, and locating a source to begin collecting love energy. Passively, I assure you.
Yeah, I would hope so. The last thing we needed was changeling raids on 10 Pony. Though if you meet ponies using corpses as decorations, screaming like lunatics all the while, feel free, fuck them up. The fewer raiders, the better.
We shall keep that in mind,
she confirmed, though frowned a little more at my language. Seriously?
But these tasks are also as pressing, and leave us short of hooves to collect the talisman, which is why I ask it of you.
Huh. Well, I guess I might make a profit from this after.
Though I am afraid I cannot pay you for it.
Huh?
We don't exactly have the caps you use for currency,
Insidiis pointed out, stopping and turning to face me directly.
Which makes us, in pony terms, completely broke. I ask this of you as the princess of a people who are only just emerging into the harsh world above. Please, will you help us?
Help? Just help? I've been through a lot to get here, and I have no caps to show for it. And now she wants me to venture out on some quest where I stand to gain nothing in return? But then again, these people need help, don't they? I can already see these stable dwellers are going to struggle to take their first steps into the Equestrian wasteland. The radiation, the mutated monstrosities, the raiders. They're entering a fight for the very right to exist. And those children back at that party. Could I just leave them to a fate where, in a few months, they could all be dying from an irradiated water supply? Why was this even a question? I'm a scavenger, that's what I am and always will be. I don't do hero stuff. Do I? You care, and that's a good thing. But, Scrap Heap, it's up to you to decide whether you want to be the person Stripe sees in you, or a scavenger after a simple bag of caps. Fuck. I really wasn't the same pony that had left New Appaloosa, was I? Ever since Calamity had saved my life, everything had changed. Some pony had saved me without wanting a damn thing in return, and ever since then, I just could not look the other way. First, it was that family I had saved from that malfunctioning Mr. Gutsy. And then it was Stripe, back when I'd helped her fight those other zebras and raiders. I had friends for the first time in my life, and they saw something in me that, well, I didn't really want to see for the longest time. They saw more than a scavenger doomed to scrounge through junk for the rest of his life. They saw a pony that was worth a damn and one who had a right to have friends at all. Just like those ponies on the radio. I could say no, and just walk away. Go back to my junk piles, turn back the clock. Or I could prove Stripe right, and I could help these changelings for the pure sake of ensuring that these people survive in the wasteland. To be kind. It was time to make that choice. And I had chosen. Well, I announced to the princess as I clapped my hooves together, and then began to walk down the corridor while the princess watched on curiously. If I was actually doing this, what was the point of sitting on our asses any longer? Guess I'm a hero now. When we finally arrived at the infirmary, ready to commit to my complete stupidity that was playing hero, I was immediately met by the sight of Cobalt in discussion with a changeling in some kind of lab coat. There were a couple others, doctors I guess, around the room alongside a few security guards watching Cobalt like a hawk. There was one other changeling in the room that was doing her best to make herself as small as possible, as if hoping not to be noticed. Unlike the others, she wasn't wearing any clothes beyond 2 yellow medical boxes strapped to her sides, with the image of 3 pink butterflies on them. Neither was she wearing a pipbuck, now that I looked. Huh. But the odd changeling aside, Cobalt turned to face me the moment I stepped in. "Scrap Heap," Cobalt said with no small amount of relief. "So you met the Overmare?" "Yeah, you could say that," I replied, glancing at the large changeling. I then focused on the zebra on the bed and quickly moved to her side. "How's Stripe?"
She'll be fine,
one of the doctors assured me.
"We gave her sufficient antidote for the poison. She should be good to go in the morning."
"I wish it felt like it." My eyes widened as the zebra mare spoke, and saw her eyes open a crack to weakly look up at me. "Not how I imagined crossing the finish line."
"I don't know how you could casually explain going up against a scorpion of that size,"
the doctor muttered scornfully as she walked away, having clearly been given the details by Cobalt.
"Crazy service dollars."
I ignored the drone, placing my hoof on Stripes. "So, are you all right?" "I will be," she replied with a pained chuckle. She finished her half-hearted laugh with a cough before settling down again. Wait, why was she suddenly blushing? I heard that you carried me all the way down here." "Oh yeah? What did Cobalt say exactly?" I asked, glancing back at the other unicorn. "That you freaked out, shot your way through a horde of ghouls, and got gassed in order to save her life." Cobalt replied with a shake of his head. "I wish I was exaggerating, but I don't need to tell you that I'm not." Stripe looked at me curiously. "You truly went through that, just for me?" Well, yeah. What else could I say? I think you were right about me, Stripe. I don't want to be that useless, apathetic scavenger anymore. I want to help people, just like you. Scrap. More than that, I continued without hesitation. You're my first friend. And maybe my closest. I couldn't bear to see you hurt. When I saw what that creature did to you, I had to save you. Nothing else mattered at that point. I sighed, letting a mountain of stress and worry melt away. I'm just glad you are going to be all right. If I hadn't gotten here in time... Stripe's eyes met mine, and I could see the flurry of emotions inside them. And honestly, they spread to me the longer I looked. I could see the relief, the thankfulness, and something else. I really couldn't place it, but who cares? Stripe was okay. She was here. I was content just to sit at her bedside, locked in that one moment. Why was everyone in the room giving us that exact same knowing smirk? Princess Insidiis in particular seemed to be infuriatingly smug.
It's certainly been a while since I've seen such embers growing in a pony's heart. How delicious.
What? I immediately backed away from the table, coughing into a hoof. I mean, why were they looking at us like that? Was there a problem with showing a little concern? Because that's all it was! Really? Stripe seemed to share my sentiments, forcing herself into a sitting position and glaring at the others. Yes, I am grateful that my life was spared. Now would you please stop staring at the zebra, you foolish changelings? Yeah, how rude of them. Ha! And they were getting the message. That's right, divert your gazes. I shot a victorious grin at Stripe, who only seemed to falter and look away with a blush. Why was I feeling bloat sprites in my stomach? Anyway. The princess has asked us to go hunting for a water talisman since there's a shot, I announced to my two friends. Apparently they know of another stable where we can look. And I say we help them. They're going to need it. You are new to the wasteland, Stripe said while looking at Insidiis, the princess giving a nod of affirmation. Then I agree. Water is key to a thriving settlement. Without it, the changeling hive will not last. And in return? Cobalt asked. Nothing, I answered. They have nothing to give. Which is fair enough, they don't exactly use caps. Stripe was practically beaming at me. To assist a species away from the edge of extinction. Could there be a worthier purpose? Cobalt hummed. Well, I guess I'm being dragged along for the ride. But first, he turned to the princess. If you could give us access to your mainframe, we could search up information about this other stable. But I would also like to look into some MAS project Queen Chrysalis was involved in during the war. Whatever it is, well, maybe it could be put to use helping the wasteland. Insidiis raised an eyebrow and considered his words. I'm aware that my mother had ties with Twilight Sparkle, though I never did find out in what way. If there is something to be found, feel free to read up on it. Cobalt's mood significantly lightened. Thank you, Princess. That is all I wanted to hear. Very well. Your weapons will be returned when you leave in the morning, Insidiis announced. My teams will begin the cleanup of the hive in the meantime. I shall have some extra supplies readied for you, as I will also have your rooms prepared, for both now and when you return. I thanked the princess, and I was quite eager to get some real sleep of the non-knocked-out variety. And what I was feeling was strange. The future was more uncertain than ever. Where once I had the whole plan of getting enough caps to get a house of my own, none of that really seemed to matter anymore. Tomorrow I would do everything in my power to help these changelings, and anyone else who needed it. Me and my two friends. Oh, and one last thing. Insidiis halted as she made to leave the infirmary, glancing back at us. Do any of you have significant medical training? Huh. No, I don't believe we did. No, Cobalt answered for me. We've largely been relying on healing potions. The last time one of us got seriously hurt, it was a rather, tense time. Oh yeah, when I'd exploded. Insidiis gave the matter some thought before turning to look at the changeling I had spotted earlier. Ultrix? The drone yelped at the sudden attention before trying to compose herself.
Yes, Your Highness?
Could you please accompany our guests to Stable 77? See to their medical needs as best as you can.
The princess requested. It wasn't an order, I realized. She was letting the changeling, Ultrix, decide for herself. Ultrix gulped, looked at us nervously. She seemed timid. Definitely not a fighter. We'd have to be sure to keep her back if we ever, or rather, when we encountered hostiles. And honestly, I was sure she was going to say no.
Okay.
She suddenly decided, surprising the heck out of me.
If they'd be hurt without me, then I'll go. Even if it's scary.
Are you sure? I asked Ultrix. It's dangerous up there.
But I don't want anyone to be hurt because I wasn't brave.
Ultrix replied honestly. Huh. Guess she was stronger than I was giving her credit for.
You know, if you want me there.
Me, Cobalt, and Stripe looked between each other. Sure, we'd have to be sure to protect her. But still, could we say no to a trained medical practitioner coming along with us? Okay, Ultrix, I said, holding my hoof out to her. If that's what you want, then welcome aboard. Ultrix looked at my hoof nervously, then reached out with her own before shaking mine in a rather feeble manner. Then she retracted, flushing in small embarrassment.
It's nice to meet you.
Ultrix stated.
I'm Ultrix, but you knew that, though I don't think I quite caught your names.
We all introduced ourselves to the changeling, and Insidiis used this moment to slide out of the infirmary with a quick warning to me to bring Ultrix back in one piece, and also telling one of the guards to show us to our rooms when we were finished. Well, we had better turn in, Cobalt suggested, and I need to browse the stable database. Hopefully I find something good for my peers back home. Right, I muttered in reply before I turned back to Ultrix. Well, Ultrix, I look forward to getting to know you better. Will you be taking anything in particular on the trip? Just so long as you don't pack too heavily.
Oh, I wouldn't worry.
Ultrix assured.
I have everything I need in my medical boxes. I'm not even going to bring a pipbuck since they're so itchy to wear.
Well, that answered that unspoken question. Still, I felt a little better with a medic in our group. And really, in the new territory I was throwing my life blindly into, who could say no to more friends? After all, I had a feeling I was going to need them in the coming days.